Welcome to our first episode of Transparent. How are you feeling, Christina?
I'm feeling really well. How are you feeling, Julia?
I'm feeling really well too.
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
What are you excited about?
I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm the unfolding of all of it and learning, the growth, the discovery. There's lots to be excited about. Are you not excited?
I'm very excited. No, I'm just listening to you.
Oh, well, you're a good listener.
I've been practicing my listening. Thank you. No, I'm also very excited. I still don't understand why you want to do this. I know why I want to do this, and I spent a lot of time thinking about transgender stuff.
Yeah, and I have too over the last few months, which I didn't know was going to be part of my journey, but here we are.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the last few months, who you are as a person, and why you now want to spend every Friday in my dining room talking about transgender stuff.
Other than me loving you so much. A little bit about who I am. First and foremost, I'm a mother. I think that's what comes to mind first, and is my favorite job, if you can call it a job or role. I'm a healthcare provider, business owner. I think last time we talked about this, I was, you go through all of the things. I'm a wife and a mother and a daughter, and now we talk about, do I have to state that I'm a woman and all of this stuff? But anyhow, we'll talk more about that. But that's pretty much me in a nutshell, I think. How about you, Julia? Tell us a little bit about you.
So my name is Julia. And who am I as a person? I could just start listing my hobbies if that's helpful.
Do you like to puzzle?
To puzzle?
To puzzle.
What does it mean to puzzle?
Oh, wow, then you don't puzzle.
Okay, like puzzles mind. Like on the table?
No, we won't.
Like puzzle pieces?
Yes, we're not continuing this conversation. I can't believe you don't know what puzzling is.
I actually think we need to continue this conversation because I now have a puzzle story I need to tell you about. So
okay, you might be able to redeem yourself here.
So growing up, my mom thought I loved puzzles.
Never mind.
And I did not love puzzles. I was like, this is really tedious. This is a really tedious way to build a picture. But I didn't know how to tell my mom that. And so I just kept getting puzzles, or she'd buy puzzles for the family. And then I would participate and do them. But I think I was probably 25 by the time I told her, I'm really not that into puzzles. And
wow. And she would just buy you puzzles.
Yeah. And looking back now, I think there's actually something deeper there. Because there's a lot of things in my life in terms of who I was, my identity and my interests that I didn't share with my parents and with my family. I was trying to be a man, and I was trying to be a boy, and then I was trying to be a man, and I had a very rigid conception of what that meant. And so I would not touch all of this category of things, and I was supposed to touch all of this category of things. And that puzzle was one of those things for me of like, that was a boy thing to do.
What?
I'm not saying that I still stand by that, but when little Jason absolutely thought that was a boy thing to do.
Okay, so we have a lot to discover about one another.
We have a lot. Yeah, we've been recording these now for what, about, I think, 15 or 16 hours. We're finally up to episode 1.
There's got to be more hours than that. And yet we still have so much to learn.
So, so curious. What have you learned about me so far?
Oh my goodness. So much. I'm not going to go into some of,
all of my deepest, darkest secrets.
I have learned that you're incredibly compassionate and open. I would like to think you're honest, but I can't know that to be true yet. 100%. Or I guess ever.
In the last
I guess we never know.
There's going to be an epic plot twist.
Oh boy.
It's all going to unravel.
Hey. No, I have come to love you very much.
I feel the same about you.
And I love our Fridays together.
I love our Fridays together as well.
Okay, so you said that you know why you're here. So maybe tell us a little bit about why you're spending your Fridays plus doing all of this.
Why am I spending my Fridays plus doing all of this? So 2022 was an election year in Ontario across all municipalities. Because I don't know if you know much about the elections here. I don't know if you've ever run as a candidate.
I don't know too much about the elections, municipal elections.
No, that's too bad.
I think I know more about it than I'd like to now. Yeah.
See, I was I guess we should back up and
Yeah,
tell
for
everyone
those-
that we both
those-
ran
yeah.
as candidates
was-
in the 2022 trustee election for the Waterloo Region District School Board. And I was a fan of elections long before that because I
Municipal?
worked in because
Specifically?
I worked in city administration
Oh, that's
previously.
right.
So
Yeah,
I was on
yeah.
the elections committee for 2018 for an Ontario municipality, and so all of the ins and outs of like third-party advertising rules and stuff.
Oh,
This was my
man.
jam. I got to carry around tabulators
not my
before and
jam.
all of these things. So I just wanted to have fun, see my own name on like the tabulator and getting to do the thing where you
Okay.
say your name so
Yep.
that the
It's like on a bucket list.
yeah, exactly. I can die in peace now that I've not been elected in an election.
Okay. Yep. Me too. Yep. That was actually, I have a bucket list with just a few things that are just just a few little things. And municipal elections was not on that bucket list. Mm-mm.
So a lot of us say we have a bucket list, but you have a real
Well, I mean,
written
just
down list?
no, not a written down list, but just things that I want to see the Northern Lights. I wanted to be a juror.
You want to be called for jury duty.
I have already been.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so that's done.
Do you want to be called again?
I don't wish that upon anyone. I think it was an amazing experience. It was eye-opening. The perspectives I gained from that are unreal. Like it's, and I carry that with me for sure. But it was incredibly stressful. It was a murder case, so yeah.
I am so jealous
Wow,
of you right now.
So
like
we've
I
got
have
some stuff
wanted
to
to
talk
be called
about,
for jury duty. This will be a different episode.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back. Yeah.
So I would love to share with you a little bit about why I ended up deciding to run in the trustee election. It really leads back to earlier this year when a teacher, Carolyn Brzozowski, did a presentation where she expressed some concerns about certain material that was available for students in elementary and secondary school libraries. And it was predominantly LGBT related material.
Right.
And that presentation was cut short. I believe that the trustees at the time had some concerns about whether or not hate speech legislation whether lines were being crossed in that domain. And of course, like most people, I wasn't watching that video live. I think you said you were watching it live, right?
Yeah.
Because by then you were super into this. I was not. I had better things to do with a Tuesday night or whatever day of the week it was.
Monday.
You remember this very clearly, don't you? But for me then, the next day, the board sent out this email apologizing for the transphobic material that had occurred in the board meeting. And of course, I love a good scandal. So I couldn't help but go and see what happened. And the board had not listed the video, but I found it, of course, on Twitter. And when I got to the end of it, I remember my first reaction was, but where's the rest?
The video was posted, by the way. It just was taken down.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, so by the time I got to the site, it was gone by then. Anyways, I watched this video, and when I got to the end, I didn't understand where the concern was. What I heard was a teacher who asked a question and said, is this material inappropriate? Are we crossing lines? Let's have a conversation. And I don't know the books that are in libraries these days. My daughter is 16, so I'm not looking at the elementary material, but some of the stuff she raised sounded like it could be concerning. And I thought, why not have this conversation? The worst we do is decide that the books are fine and we don't do anything. And I didn't understand where she had purportedly crossed the line. And as tensions escalated then in the board and in our community over the following months, I felt that it was appropriate for me to run because I might be able to be a middle voice. What about you, Christina? Why did you decide to run in the trustee election?
Yeah, I mean, Cole's notes would be, I was noticing that parents, constituents' voices were not being heard, right? Like people have concerns and questions and they're just ignored. Not only are they not being considered in decisions, but they're completely being ignored. I didn't see that until you don't see that. There's a process to that. And so for me, it was when I had concerns with the kids and the mandates. So, I mean, let's not get into COVID mandates, I guess, that maybe we'll do an episode on that. But we were told we needed to do certain things to keep safe. And I mean, we were all for that, right? I mean, 2 weeks, we're good. Anyone can do anything for 2 weeks. And then when we learned more about some of the risks for masking, for instance, especially for children and, risks versus benefits, it was concerning to have the kids wearing masks. They were in French immersion, even just like logistic wise of them learning a language. It was like, I mean, if we know that this may not be benefiting, long story short is I brought that forward. You know, I didn't even know what the Waterloo Region District School Board necessarily, I knew there was a board. I mean, I guess I just didn't really know how the systems worked and what my role in the system was. And so I'm really grateful for it, for being able to learn all that. I mean, it's unfortunate the way I had to learn it. But so again, going back to, come on, bring it back, Christina. It was only during this process that I learned, you know, my place within the Waterloo Region District School Board, kind of what role do I play as a constituent and that sort of thing. It was when I was looking to create change, or at least invoke some sort of critical thought within this mask mandating. So becoming a delegate in front of the board. Once I knew what that looked like, I knew that other people were speaking up in front of the board. And so that's, again, where I saw, you know, Carolyn Brzezinski speak. And again, I saw that live and her being cut off, and my jaw just dropped. And I'm like, how is this happening right now? And I remember, you know, creating a post right away. And so about just what's happening. And I had been doing that all the way through, a lot of, you know, critical thought, conscious thought. And I had a lot of people saying that I should run because of the advocacy that I kind of put forward through the last, I guess, 3 years now. But I mean, I guess that kind of answers the question about why I ran, but why I'm sitting here. As you said, you still don't know why I'm sitting here with you. And it was that process again, right? Like I didn't know really much about the gender ideology stuff. I'm trying to think back, like, when did I know anything about that before? I don't think I knew much about it at all until Carolyn's presentation.
It's not something that's on most people's
minds.
It's on my mind as
what was on, well, I mean, and imagine what was on my mind during the whole lockdown process. It was the mandates and my kids and how it's impacting society as a whole and our health and all of that stuff. So it really was a segue into all of this. And then obviously running, that was a whole new learning experience as well. And you keep on learning as we're going. But I think as you stated, we have a really unique viewpoint to be able to share and discover from one another as well. So I'm really excited about the learning for myself, but also being able to, you know, share that with whoever wants to listen to it.
When I made the decision to ultimately run and have a campaign for the election, I knew that I would be facing some candidates who would potentially be anti-transgender. And I didn't know the extreme to which those candidates might be, but I was prepared that I could be up against a lot. And even Carolyn Brzezinski herself, I saw her presentation, and one of the first thoughts that I had is, but who is the person who's making this presentation? Because some people would and have made presentations like that and come from a very hateful place. And I certainly didn't know Carolyn at that point in time. And so I suspect that's what some of the trustees on the board were thinking, is there's probably a lot of hate behind this. And I didn't know the answer to that. Through the campaign, I had the wonderful opportunity to get to know Carolyn. And she's someone who I now consider to be a great friend. Actually, last night, my daughter and my wife and I were out with ice cream for her. We were there for 2 hours, and she gave us each these poinsettias. So we have 3 matching poinsettias. And
she's got such a great heart.
She has a wonderful heart. And for me, that was what was so rewarding about running. I was hearing this story across social media and across our news about the anti-woke candidates and how hateful, well, you, Christina, were, and everybody else in terms of what people were saying and believing and what you and some of the candidates like you were pushing for. And now that I've had the opportunity to get to know you very well, because we do this every Friday, but also so many of the other candidates too, that narrative is false. It's not true. And I think that you have a story to tell. That, for me, is the objective of this podcast. And who better to do it than you and I? Because we come from two very different places. You are an open, transparent, honest person who wants to have tough conversations. And I saw that light in you, and I thought, what if we dove into this stuff together and brought love and trust, but also brought difference of opinion and really had the conversations that need to be had.
Isn't that love and trust? Having that difference of opinion, being able to...
I guess so. And at this point, we've recorded enough that we have already had some really challenging conversations. And I'm so thankful that you're challenging me and having those conversations, because I can learn and grow from them as well. And I think so often, especially in the LGBT space, we have a culture of safetyism where you can't talk, you can't say, you can't challenge. And I know you come from a place of love, and I'm learning a lot from it. So Cristina, I'm going to spring something on you here.
Okay.
Ahead of time, you and I prepared some questions and we reviewed them so we know where we were going to go and have some answers prepared. But this was a surprise.
Just so we didn't, record another 16 hours of us going off on a whole bunch of tangents.
It does happen that we go on tangents when we're not to the script. So we're doing this by the book this time. Absolutely. No.
Just keeping us on track.
Keeping us on track. Exactly. So our tagline for this podcast is a podcast about truth and love. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you in the context of what we're doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true. Our podcast is transparent, and that's obviously, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think it's important to specify that this is truly about love, and it's not about segregating. It's not about separating. It's not about being right. It's about figuring things out. Having compassion for one another and that grace, but with all of that being truthful in the process. And sometimes truth hurts, and sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it doesn't feel all that great, but it's kind and it's loving.
I really love what you said there, that truth is challenging. I want to get into some very deep topics as part of what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. A lot of the taboo conversations that everybody is thinking, and certain people are saying very loud and vocally,
or you're not allowed to talk about.
And we've already had some of those in what we've recorded, talking about pronouns, talking about washrooms, talking about school systems, talking about surgeries, talking about childhood surgeries. A lot of these pieces that I think is very easy to have a monolithic narrative of it's good or it's bad, and
right or wrong.
It's right or it's wrong. Or we can have the complex conversation of how do different people, how are they affected by it? How does it play out for them? And I'm excited to have those conversations with you.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
For this first episode, you and I went back and forth many times about what we should cover first.
Right.
And we started to get into some really deep topics that we're so excited to cover. And
it always goes into the deep topics.
It always goes into the deep ones. And then earlier this week, we realized that we hadn't covered the basics. We were brought together based on the school board stuff, which was all about the content in childhood classrooms and the appropriateness of that content. And so is
that how you see it? See, I don't see it that way. Which, I mean, I guess since you went on Twitter, it looks that way. But no, that wasn't what it was. It wasn't, like I said, it didn't start there with me, right? It started with mandates for our kids. And then it went into realizing that people have concerns and they just get shut down. This gender ideology stuff came in after noticing that and realizing it. I was already made privy to what was happening in the board. And then I saw this and it was like, wow. So, I mean, yes, it was pivotal in the urgency. And I just hear the people in the back, right? Oh, the fear mongering. And no, it's not about that. It's seeing it and having a strong pull in my conscience, knowing that this isn't the manner in which I want my kids to grow up. Whether or not you do, like, and somebody else wants to, that's fine. And that's the thing here too, right? It's like, well, I mean, if I think it's wrong, let's say, if I think it's wrong, then I don't want it. I don't want that to be, I don't want any child to go through that. Of course I care about every child. But it also isn't my choice. And so if you have other families who want to bring up their kids in a certain way, that's not my choice, right? The thing is we're all constituents and we're all paying taxes. So, I mean, if our voices aren't going to be heard, then we got to get out, or our voices need to be recognized in this.
So just to make sure I've got that right, because I'm learning something new about you here.
Oh, really?
It wasn't so much what was being taught in school. It was more what you learned about the mechanism of a lack of ability to have input on it.
That's right.
Period.
Yeah.
Even if you agreed with what it was.
If it's the right, if it's working for the kids, if the constituents are saying, yes, this is working, this aligns with how I want my kids to learn, then, I mean, we would go for it, right? The thing is that there's enough people who don't agree with it, and yet we're not even able to have the conversation.
So what you just said was agree with it. Can you outline for me what is it in this particular discussion?
It can be anything. In this particular discussion, I guess we're talking about gender ideology or inclusivity or whatever that is, right? I mean, or it could be diversity. It could be anti-racism theory. It can be all of those things, right? It doesn't matter. You can replace it with whatever the issue is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For this episode, we decided we're going to talk about the LGBT gender content in the classroom. And I would love to know, kind of Cole's Notes version from you, what would you like to see?
Oh, that's interesting. See, Julia said we prepared, but we really didn't, because that wasn't really the question. The question you asked me was, what would I like to see in the classroom and what don't I want to see in the classroom? So
answer that question.
My mind went to, well, I don't know if you want to go as broad as that, because my mind went into, you know, what do I want to see for the education for my kids? What do I want to see in the education system? And I mean, there's obviously a long-winded answer to that, as there always is with us and me. But, you know, if I'm going to think of the short answer, you can go right into my campaign slogan or vision, which is an education system where educators teach, parents parent, and students thrive. And for me, community is really important. So I had, you know, a fostering community in there as well. Kind of, I guess, as a bonus, because it doesn't necessarily have to be part of our school system. But I mean, I think that that's the environment and the experience that I'd love for my kids to have when they go through school. But
I'm going to nail you down a little bit on this one, because that's political speech. I mean, nobody's going to say, I want an environment where students don't thrive. Like, nobody's pushing for that.
Right.
So what does it mean to you to thrive?
So when I say that, I mean they're thriving with everyone who's in the system, in the process, doing the roles that they are to be doing and not taking over other people's roles. So for me, it was very much, my issue and why I ran was the overlap of educators taking the role that parents are to be having, you know, or educators taking the role that mental health experts are supposed to be taking. I want people to stay in their lanes when it comes to the school board. That's kind of what, I mean, it overlaps. There's some overlap, of course, and that's part of the community as well, is taking that initiative of taking accountability for not just yourself, but also the people you care for. I understand that, and I want that. I don't want it to look like a very siloed system where, oh, nope, I can't do that because that's not my role. I'm not getting paid for that. That's not what I want it to look like, and that's kind of how it sounds like when I'm just hearing myself here. But I think it's really important that we don't. And again, I mean, this. I feel like we're going to have to go deep to answer that question. But do you want to kind of go through what an education system looks like for us, like what we would envision and what our kids are getting out of the school system, and then we can go into what we don't want it to include?
I would really love that from you, because if I consult Twitter right now to understand you, what I would learn is that you're transphobic. that you're transphobic and you don't...
Would you get that from me, or would you get that from...
No, I don't get that from you.
Okay.
I would get that from Twitter.
But would you get that from my tweets?
No,
or would
no.
you...
You're putting me on the spot.
Okay.
No,
I would understand.
I'll admit, sometimes you tweet in ways that are a little bit provocative. And I'm sure
we'll discuss... I don't know that that's fair to say if you had been part of the campaign process. Like, I don't know if... I'm curious because I do now. I'm getting a little bit more cutthroat with it, I think.
Okay. And I know that Twitter invites all of us to behave that way.
Yeah.
So I understand. What? You can say it.
No.
You should say it. Oh. Truth and love.
Transparency.
And transparency has ended as a veil has come between
I'm not going to use
the
the excuse of Twitter doing anything to me. And it's my truth. And it's, I see how some people portray the truth of what I believe to be true as well in a manner that I wouldn't necessarily go about. And I think that brings us to you and I, where we really want to approach this with love and compassion. I think there's a place for it. I mean, even you know that as a parent, like there's a place for sternness. Absolutely. And, so I think that, I won't I guess I don't know. That just kind of rubbed me the wrong way when you said Twitter would do that. Twitter, because I think that comes from, that narrative of, you don't have to take things seriously on Twitter, or things that are mentioned on social media, you don't have to take it all seriously. And for me, I just think to myself, and we talked about this, I don't know if we'll ever get to that segment, like that part of the segment, but I just couldn't fathom being someone else on Twitter. I would never say something on Twitter that I wouldn't say to your face.
I think it's the gamification of Twitter. I think that what we're building here is long form discussion. People who listen to this are genuinely interested. They just listen to 10 minutes of us talking about, a lot of preamble leading into this. And so they're looking for nuance and complexity. You do well on Twitter. You win the game of Twitter by getting likes, by getting retweets, and getting followers. And so it is by definition showy and performative. And
I mean, I guess if you're there for that. Yeah.
And so you could have a nuanced conversation, or you can post something in as few words as possible to be a bit grabby and be like, ooh, look what I just said. I went there. And that's what does well on Twitter. I'm not saying this to accuse you. That's what anybody who is effective at Twitter does.
I guess what I'm having trouble with is I didn't do that for the pull. I didn't do that for the like. I didn't do it. I just did it because the pull was just to do what I felt was the right thing to do at that time. Right. I guess is what I'm saying. Anyhow. So, I mean, I have a list here of what I would like the school system to kind of look like. And maybe because I'd like to hear from you too.
I would love to hear that list.
I mean, it's not anything earth-shattering by any means, but just so I can stay on track here. Obviously, I want schools to be equipping the kids with the skills, really the building blocks for them to be able to build their own success, whatever that looks like for them, right? Because everyone has their own passions and proficiencies. So, and I know I say that as if it's not happening. I know there's fabulous educators making this possible, like every day. But I also know that there are fabulous educators that feel there's a lot of stuff getting in the way of them being able to complete that mission. So, I'd say, when a student has completed their journey through the education system, I'd want them to have a very high literacy or understanding in obviously those things like, mathematical literacy, their reading, their writing, their science, the systems in general, like political systems, banking, business, healthcare, schools, having a good sense of well-being and health. Obviously, I want all of this to be kind of incorporated in for sure. Self-regulation and coping is a big one. Resiliency, which I think is a huge problem right now, lack of resiliency. And I think we could probably do a whole episode on that. I want them to be problem solvers. I want students to graduate being skilled up in, not only the critical thought. We talk a lot about critical thinking and that sort of thing, but almost that conscious awareness as well on top of that.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So I'm noticing that your list here, I think there's very few things you're saying that anyone's going to disagree with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who doesn't want their kids to learn math?
Right.
This is not what a lot of people heard in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
What people heard in the campaign was LGBT materials and whether or not there was a place for that in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is a place, what does that mean? Because that could come in lots of forms.
Well, am I missing anything from my list of what we want? What is the vision for the school board? For school in general? Am I missing anything there before we get into what we don't want? Because I think that the stuff that we don't want in the schools is the fact that there's some other stuff in the schools right now that are getting in the way with this list that I just presented.
Yeah, and I guess I feel like talking about those is going to help to clarify the list because...
Okay. I would like to hear from you of things that are currently in the school. Are you happy with the school board right now and how kids are learning?
I guess I approached this from a very different angle than you did. You just gave me a list of things that you want to see at school, and I don't disagree with anything that you shared.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I took those as a given, and I still think I stand by that. I think those things are happening at the school.
Mm-hmm.
What is also happening, though, is a lot more. And I'm not sure that might be inevitable because how do you extract a moral foundation from something like school? When you tell a kid, don't bite, there's a lot of moral weight behind that. We're saying it's wrong to hurt someone else. It's wrong to use power in that way against somebody else. And we don't give them that theory, but the judgment
respect someone else's body,
all of that has morals behind it.
Right.
And someone could plausibly say, I don't think that respecting other people's bodies is a moral that I believe in, and that's a possible moral framework you could have. So in one sense, it's inevitable that has to come in and be part of school as well. On the other hand, that particular one who's arguing that school should be more violent, I don't think anybody is really holding that position. That's not a controversial one in our society, but there is certainly controversy around sex and gender, around race, around a lot of these critical issues right now. I think the concern that galvanized a number of people, both in our local trustee election, but also other elections across North America in recent years, has been the way that those issues are being handled in the school. What concerns do you have in those domains in terms of what you have discovered kids are hearing or not hearing that you wish they were or were not being taught?
I think the bottom line is that, again, it doesn't need to be right or wrong. It's that right now there are things being taught in school that aren't necessarily truth or science based or proven to be true. They're ideas. And, like David Haskell would even say that, because I was going to say they're theories. These are theories. They're possibilities. They're possible truths. There's a theory that you can explore and think critically about. And then there's other theories that you can look at. And what are your thoughts on that? That's how I want my kids to learn. But that's not what's happening right now. Right now, it's being thrown at them as truth. It's being thrown at, this is a fact. Therefore, it is right. Therefore, this is how we need to act. This is how we have to behave. This is how we have to talk. This is how we have to think. Right? So when I went through my list, I wasn't completely done because I didn't go into the social aspect of it. But I mean, you said very quickly, you said, I don't think anyone would disagree with this. I wonder if there would be some people, like when we think of critical thinking, that's being removed if we can't pull these theories apart, can't dispute them, discuss them, have dialogue with them about them.
You touched on something there that reminds me of a conversation that we had last week. I was trying to catch you. I was trying to throw a difficult question at you. So I asked you, what would you tell your kids if they met me? I haven't met your kids yet, but they're 6 and 8, I believe, right? You have 2 boys.
Yeah.
I'm transgender. And I know that some parents would not be comfortable with their kids even meeting someone who's transgender. And I wanted to know where you stood. And I made assumptions about you that you might not want me to meet your kids because of who I am and because you might have this bubble of protectionism that you're creating. I kind of assumed that you were coming from the same place, that you might have not liked some of these things in school because you wanted to control the narrative, because you wanted
And that surprised me when you said that.
That was my assumption about you. And the answer you gave was completely different than that. So I guess I'll throw that question at you again now so you can answer it again in terms of what would you tell your boys about what you're doing with me, about who I am? What pronouns would you use? What name would you use? How would you handle this conversation with them? And even further than that, what if they start asking questions? What would you say to them about it?
Yeah, and for me, it was when you told me you were surprised by that and you told me that you were expecting what you were expecting of my answer. That surprised me because, I mean, one moment you're telling me that I appeared open and approachable. And then the next moment, you're telling me that your expectation of my response was very closed and very controlled. And so, I mean, I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful that you shared that with me because it's something that I'm sure if you're thinking it, there's a lot of people who are thinking it. And I think that it's important that we all check ourselves. I almost wish we could play the clip because I know we recorded that, but we always go off on tangents. So I do remember using an example and then I remember saying, I never finished my thought on that. And the story that I shared was about just this past summer with my kids. We were at the pool and this man was crossing the street. He was walking on his knees. So he was missing the half of his legs on both legs. And so I knew that the kids would be curious about this. I'm curious about this, right? Naturally. But for us, we're taught to hold those curiosities in. We're told it's not right to ask. It's not polite to ask questions and all of this. Once we're older, I think that's okay to have those expectations of one another. So I knew the kids would be curious about it. He walked into to the pool deck area. And so I just talked to them and said, it's okay to be curious about this. And I basically just walk them through how I would deal with it. Not necessarily the right way or the wrong way, but from what I've learned in life, what I think the best way to approach this would be.
And I'm assuming that they didn't say that with judgment. It's just,
no, and that's,
Mom, look, he has
right.
no legs.
But that's the problem that's the problem is that the rule book today says that it doesn't matter what the intention was. It doesn't matter that it was, it was an innocent question. The question's dangerous, which I think is incredibly misfortunate. It's unfortunate for us as a society to be teaching that way.
You said something when we talked about this last week, which was you're not looking to control the narrative for your children. Your concern is that the school is trying to control the narrative. Mm-hmm. You don't want to tell them that I am a woman, and you don't want to tell them that I'm not a woman. You don't have any vested interest in swaying that. You just want to give them the tools and the instruments to be able to think critically and decide for themselves. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because like I said, I know that I don't know it all. And I also know that my perception changes as more perspectives come in. So I'm open to that. I mean, I'm not here to say what is necessarily right or wrong. I just want to say in terms of where I think we could go for it to be the very best for our kids right now with what we know to be true. Going back to that story with this man who is missing part of his legs, I surprised myself sometimes. I mean, I guess kind of going through it, I told the kids, I know you probably have questions and it's not that it's bad to ask. He obviously has a story to tell. Right. He has a story that he could share. The thing is that we don't know if it's a story he wants to share. It's not like he's obligated to share the story every time someone has a question, because I'm sure there's questions every single time he walks into a room. And so we have to honor that. And so I talked to them about, earning the right to that information almost, and if it's more of a, what happened to your legs? Maybe if you do want to ask him, if it feels right to ask him, then maybe ask him, hey, is it okay if I ask you about what happened to your legs? If he wants to share it, then he'll share it. And he also has the option to say, you know what, I don't want to talk about my legs. It seems like they're so young to have a conversation like that, but they totally understood it. And they were a little bit embarrassed to ask the question the way that I suggested them to pose it. But the day went on. This man, we ended up realizing it was Patrick Anderson. We found out he was the number one basketball player, wheelchair basketball player in all of the world, which was really cool. We didn't know that the first day we met him, and he came back the next day. I wasn't there with the boys. We had this whole conversation about it. And next thing you know, I'm picking up the boys and they're playing with Patrick Anderson. They're playing tennis on the tennis court. And when we got home, they told me about what happened to his legs. They said, "Oh, Mom, we talked to Patrick and he said he got hit by a car." I was just like, "Wow, tell me how you found out." Like, "Oh, he told us. We were playing and then he ended up telling us what happened." And I said, "Wow, he probably has." And then that's when they told me that he was the number one basketball player in Canada, in the world, and wheelchair basketball player. We looked him up on Google and all this stuff. And he shares his story, of course, right? He has this amazing story to share. But at the same time, there are people who have gone through things that we can see that they've gone through something. It's apparent that they've gone through something. And I don't know that it's doing anyone any justice to just kind of pretend it didn't happen or pretend that we don't see it. Maybe, the way we go about asking questions can change. Maybe being okay to have the question posed and knowing how to deal with the question when it's posed to us, because we also know that the truth is that when we present ourselves, people can see things about us. When you asked me that question of how I would introduce you to my kids, or what are you going to tell the kids when you go home and where you were, and then, I would just say I'm with Julia. Like, I was with Julia and we're doing a podcast about some of the things that you guys know that Mom and Dad have been talking about the school board. But then you went into, follow-up questions of, what if when they meet me, they notice my voice is lower? What if they have questions about that? And it goes to the same kind of mentality that I had when we saw Patrick Anderson. Like, I'm not here to disclose any of your personal information. I mean, and so I had said to you, I guess I need to have a conversation with you about what you would want me to share. I never lie to my kids. Do I withhold some, if there's something that seems a little bit more complex that they would need a lot more understanding about before I got into a topic? Absolutely. I think that's natural, of course. But I mean, if they ask me a question, I'm not gonna lie to them.
Everything that we've been saying here, for me, really helps to color who you are and what you would like to see in the education system. And it sounds like you just want your kids to learn how to think critically. Mm-hmm. You have no concerns with transgender matters being mentioned in school. You just want it to be done without feeding them a particular narrative of what to think about it. You want them to know transgender people exist. You want them to know that some people feel this way, so that they know that this is part of the world they live in, and leave it to them to figure out, do I agree with that? Do I support that? And of course, the biggie, am I transgender? Rather than having us, we'll give them the ideology, as much as I don't want to use that word, of how to approach that and how to think about those issues. Is that fair?
I think it's fair. I mean, I would say that there's some yes and no to some of that. And I think maybe we'll dig deeper into all of that as we go on, for sure. I have a question for you, actually.
Oh, surprise question. I can't wait. Throw it at me.
It's not really a surprise question. Something that I and many parents, constituents, staff, even students have been standing up, kind of just about the manner in which the school board is currently going about, how do I say this? Going about their inclusion strategy, particularly when it comes to gender ideologies. It's this important distinction between welcoming everyone the way they are and promoting certain ideologies. It's a bit of a contentious observation, I think. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Do you resonate with that? Do you agree with it? Do you think I'm off base by even proposing that that's what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before I answer that, though, I want to make an observation. I've noticed that you use the phrase gender ideology a lot. Did you know that that's going to be a bit of a hot one for the progressive side of things?
Do I know that it'll be hot?
That? Yes.
I think so, but I don't know if I know what you're referring to. But
one thing that I noticed on the campaign was that different wording is used on the progressive side and on the more conservative side to describe these issues, and you could almost just based on the kinds of words that we use, you understood the position of where someone was coming
right.
from.
Like identity versus ideology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
that's intentional.
And I love what we're doing here because I think we're both going to bring our own terminology to the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to do a quick call out to that to recognize, because I think
Thank you.
using that wording, some people are going to instantly hear that and go, whoa. And I want you to keep using it. I want you to keep using the wording that makes sense to you, and I'll use the wording that makes sense to me. But I just wanted to do a call out to that.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you remind me of the question now?
Yeah, I was asking you if it resonated with you, like the whole, do you think that that's even valid to make the observation or the claim that it's, this gender ideology or identity is being promoted, almost forced onto our students and our kids, as opposed to it just us being welcoming to all individuals as they are?
So my daughter is in grade 11, but she's only been with me now for about 2 years. She's my adopted daughter, and she came to live with me during COVID. Mm-hmm. So when she first started to go to the Waterloo District School Board, I was worried. And I was worried because I remembered what school was like, high school specifically, when I was in school many years ago. And that was not an LGBT safe place. And I feared what happens if she has friends who don't like me. Mm-hmm. And she has friends who don't want to come over or don't want her in their life because of who I am. And I worried, is that going to create a rift between us? Will she resent me? And I was in for a culture shock, because what I quickly learned when she went to school here was that things are very different than they were 20 years ago. And we are at a place now where not only did none of her friends have a problem with me, they all had their own identities as well. They had some combination of adjectives that I'm going to get wrong, but they're a semi this, or they're a demi this, or they're non-binary. But there are certainly individuals whom I've known, both through my daughter and through other activities where I work with children and youth, who are possibly attracted to these identities because it gives them belonging, it gives them purpose, it gives them place. And my daughter is one of the few who doesn't. Right. She is straight and cis, as in not trans. And that is the majority. At least it used to be the majority, but now you don't have that label like everybody else.
We're almost ashamed if you don't.
You're almost ashamed if you don't. And as I watch...
Or labeled as, it's gotten to the extreme where you can see people, if they're not open to exploring that's something different other than a heterosexual relationship, that they could be considered homophobic or... And
in the case of my daughter, she's not... The fact that she doesn't have that label is what makes her stick out and makes her be different. What I noticed in the school system now is that the acceptance has come. The acceptance that wasn't there in the early 2000s when I was in school is there, and that's wonderful. But it's also come with an element of promotion, where we are, I think, in our goal, in our objective to be accepting, we've made it very cool and we've made it very hip to have some of these identities. And we, in our effort to make people feel comfortable coming out if they need to, we've almost asked them to explore, and we've asked them to question whether or not they might have one of these identities. And I don't think that is helpful. Having been through a transition myself, it is expensive. It is medically risky. It results in things like infertility. It's irreversible. It's alienating. For some people, I think that is the right decision. I don't regret my decision. For me, I think it was necessary. But I don't think it's a decision that we want for someone unless other options aren't working.
Right.
And when I was young, it was so hard to be transgender. You weren't going to do it unless you were desperate. Where I think a lot of people are concerned now is that it is becoming so easy, so hip, and the schools have moved into this place of almost promoting it.
I want to catch you. I just want to check you on a word you used there. You said almost. They're almost promoting. So because we are doing a transparent podcast about truth and love, and we want to say what we mean and mean what we say, did you mean to say almost, or do you think it's promoting, or do you think it's near promotion?
Yeah, no, I struggled with my wording there because I don't think anybody's trying to promote. If you talk to these teachers, if you talk to...
Okay, I didn't ask about trying, like intentional.
Wow, this is
I'm asking, do you think it's in a place of promotion right now?
I think that is the outcome.
Yeah.
I think that it is resulting in promotion. I just want to say that carefully because I don't think that's anyone's intention. Okay. I think this is well intended to be accepting, and it has been taken to a place where it's resulting in promotion.
Right.
So we should keep the acceptance piece. We should look at where we are ending up in promotion. We should strip that piece out.
Right.
And that's where I would love to see the school system.
Yes.
I want the school system to be a place where someone who is gay, where someone who is transgender, where someone who is Muslim, where someone who is Black is comfortable, where they feel like they have a home, where they feel like they belong. I don't want to see it become a place where you feel like you're left out because you don't have those identities.
Yeah, so like the reverse is happening, right? In this effort of inclusivity, there are people who are excluded. There are people who are feeling like they are not enough just the way they are. And isn't that what we're trying to avoid?
Exactly.
Like we want to feel valued for what you are. And I don't know if maybe the solution just is too simple for people. Like, I mean, there's complexities for sure. Deep down, really, it's opening up the door. Like, you know, when people ask, well, how are you going to make everyone feel welcome? You open up the door. Like you open up the door and you let people be, you know, anything above and beyond that in terms of it's individualized.
Well, and just to add to that, you also draw the line where there is hate, because there has been LGBT hate in schools, and of course we draw the line on that.
But you draw the line with hate with anybody.
Exactly.
It's not just
LGBT specific.
That's right. It's not just race specific. The hate comes in all shapes and forms. It isn't for a label. It's individually wrapped, for sure.
There is so much more that we could, and that I wish we were diving into on this episode.
I know.
But
it's
we're
so
at the end of
tempting.
our time. And when I say we're at the end of our time, what I really mean is my family is patiently waiting behind the camera for dinner because I am blocking their access
And
to
my
the
kids
kitchen.
are waiting for a movie night.
Yes. Ooh, what movie are you watching?
Probably Elf.
Elf?
Yeah. Well, Chris already said that. Yeah. That we're going to watch Elf.
Good. Like, I have not watched Elf since I was like a teenager. And I don't remember
how old is
being...
it?
Oh, that would have been like early 2000s, mid 2000s.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
With Will Ferrell? That old?
That Elf, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, look at Will Ferrell. He's a lot older than he was in Elf.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any of his new stuff, I guess. But anyway.
But anyways, so to close things off today, I would love to know what some of the things are that you're excited about us talking about in the future. Just topics you can mention. We won't go into them here today, but just curious to know what you see coming in future episodes.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. I want to get into the pronouns again. I want to get into misogyny. I want to talk about your journey more, your perspective with that. How about you? What are things that you want to talk about?
Oh gosh, there are so many topics that I'm excited for us to cover. A lot of the basic topics. I want to talk about pronouns. I want to talk about washrooms. I want to continue to talk about the education system. But there are also a lot of deeper topics that I'm excited to really dive into as well that are not often covered in the material that's out there. Mm-hmm. I love reading books, and I have spent the last 12 months reading almost every book about critical theories, about all of the gender identity and gender ideology matters. These are books from the left, these are books from the right, and it's such a rich topic. And I'm so interested in why we can't have these conversations and why it ends up breaking down into just, am I a woman or am I not a woman? And I think we could have that discussion, and we probably will have that discussion. But I think there's so much more interesting topics that we can have beyond that. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to talk about why people end up transitioning, why people end up detransitioning, how this relates to religion, because for me that was huge. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited to talk about some of the ways that people who mean very well are sometimes hurting transgender people in ways that they would never expect. And I don't mean they need to be more sensitive, and I don't mean they need to be more guarded. I mean the exact opposite, right? That not being authentic and honest with how they feel doesn't make things better for me. One of the reasons I think you and I are so close so quickly is because we've had difficult conversations. You haven't just glossed it over and said, I have to hold this narrative, I have to say these things because that is the right thing to do as someone who's transgender. And I don't get that from very many people. You are the odd one out in that respect in my life right now. And I'm really thankful to you for that. And I think that there's a lot of things that I have learned from that experience, and other people can learn by seeing that unfold on these discussions that we're having.
I love that. I'm excited for all of that too, Julia.
I'm excited too.
And I thank you for the opportunity and for your trust in me to have those conversations.
You're a very easy person to trust. Are there people who don't trust you?
Oh, well, I don't know. I don't know about that.
I'll consult Twitter with this question later tonight. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you have a wonderful movie night tonight,
Aww.
and I will look forward to talking to you again next week.
Thank you. Thank you for holding this space and your patience with your family too.
We'll have a good dinner to make up for how late we've gone.
Good.
Awesome.
Until next Friday.
Until next Friday. Bye.
Bye.